Welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday. Let's see what's the date is. July 11th, and we're going to have a little bit of a recruiting update for you, update on Derek Meadows and where things stand with him, update on Dylan Robinson, where things stand with him, and a couple other guys, Matt Faremo, Nathaniel Wusu-Boateng. We'll touch on them a little bit. Not really big updates on them, just kind of where we think things stand. And then we're going to rank Notre Dame's offensive playmakers, which we were talking just before we hit record here, was a very difficult task. It was not easy ranking those guys. And it really, like, you talk about players who you're excited in. You talk about players who we're excited about. But then when you have to actually rank them, it really pins it down as to, like, okay, this is actually how I feel about said player. So that's going to be fun to do. So that's going to be our show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we are going live. Links to our podcast are in the YouTube description below, as always. And as always, this show is going to be brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Jamie, before we get started, what is the one thing that you have done 1,000 times over that may or may not involve committing a felony, like
committing a felony,
like our boy Mike Gundy covering for his player Ollie Gordon? But let me ask you this: Ollie Gordon gets caught for a DUI, and then a short time later, Mike Gundy is issuing a clarification on Twitter saying,
just basically admitting that he had been, I've just drunk drove dozens of times, hundreds of times, whatever it was. But wow.
Incredible, yes. Jamie. It's amazing. It's truly
I don't
amazing.
know if there's anything quite that I mean, I can't think of anything that I've done randomly. I mean, you know what I mean? Go work out. You know what I mean? Go, just doing something just so casual. He was so casual about it. I mean, whatever. This just gives me an excuse to just say, Mike Gundy, what an idiot. What just a total idiot. He's been an idiot for a long time. Thanks for being in here today, Nathan.
Yeah.
But I just think that the way, even before I saw that stuff of him basically admitting and then he had to clarify whatever, it's
yeah,
he's like, well, I'm going to punish him. I'm going to give him the ball 50 times in the first game. I'm like, oh my God, can you just not just show remorse for this guy made a mistake? Literally there was a former Oregon player who got drafted by the Vikings who literally was just killed by a drunk driver. In the football world, there were other former college players with him. He was just killed by a drunk driver, and this guy's joking about it. What? Yeah, ever since the I'm a man, I'm 40. I don't know. And just he's lucky because he's at a spot where it's he's an alum. He's won enough that you're always going to kind of be there forever and ever. But oh my God, and there was opportunities I think where he almost left before, but I can't even imagine if he would have left and gone to some of these other places where maybe he did have a mic in his face more often. Oh my God, he would not be coaching right now.
Yeah,
I don't even know what he'd be doing, but just what a fool.
It's not good, Jamie, and he totally made a complete himself. Like, why do that? Like, just and the whole thing about like it's so like it's incoherent. Like he's an employee now, so we can't punish him. Like it's different the way we punish him. Employees get punished for DUIs, Jamie. It's kind of a big in the world.
Most people get fired.
Most people get fired for that. Like, so it's just like you can't punish them because of the money. Okay, fine. And then he talks himself into a pretzel, and he himself is now I'm committing DUIs. Oh, I got to issue clarification. Well, no, I just meant mistakes that are making. Not good, Jamie. Not good. That's not what you want.
Just suspend him. Like if you're not gonna, just suspend him. That's all.
Or just say I didn't want him. I didn't want him. He's too important to our team. And because of the fact that no one got hurt, I will use that to not punish the guy. All right, fine, whatever.
But it's always. I just want to point this out. They play South Dakota State in the first game of the season, and I think they are like South Dakota State is a pretty good FCS team, but you should be able to beat South Dakota State without your best running back. Like you should be able to win that game. Suspend him for one game at the very least. Like he should get way worse than that, and maybe who knows what's going to happen with him. But just what an idiot! What an idiot!
Not good. Not good. We don't like to see that. All right, let's get into kind of the main topic of the day for everybody. Derek Meadows and Dylan Robinson. Let's start with Derek Meadows. Listen, on the Tuesday show, we wanted to kind of make sure it was clear that we're talking about snapshots in time for these guys, right? The players are, when they're in decision mode like this, things can go back and forth. When you get an update, the update is for that day, for that moment, and it's very fluid. And we saw that exactly what happened. The same that night, Notre Dame jumps on a call with Derek Meadows. They make headway with him. They kind of get back into things with him. And that led to them being back in the race. Now, I want to be very clear about this. Irish Sports Daily believes that Notre Dame and Alabama are, quote unquote, trailing LSU at the moment. Now, I put it on the Irish Sports Daily message board too. When we use words like trailing or running third or whatever it might be, this isn't an actual race, right? Like it's not like you actually have to make up physical ground. It's just that at this moment in time, we believe that if the decision was made today, the decision would be for LSU. Now, that could change in 10 minutes. That could change in a phone call. That could change with one person having a conversation that clarifies things for the player, right? And I think it's important to understand that like no one really knows on Derek Meadows, especially because he's announcing over the weekend. So that his announcement's sooner. No one knows because the player doesn't know. And so if the player doesn't know, then no one else can really know. And so that's what's important to understand. Now, that whenever there's a report that Notre Dame is kind of out, right, is behind two other schools, Alabama and LSU, whenever there's a report like that, I think everyone kind of thinks like any positive report after that is spin, right? I think for a lot of people, that's their kind of way of thinking. I don't believe that's the case here. I do believe that Notre Dame has put themselves back into the race. I think you could absolutely pick them. Okay. We're being clear. We think Notre Dame is not the pick as of today, but I think they could be. And I think that's where kind of
I wouldn't even say he's not the pick as of today. I would say no one is the pick as of today. That's how
I'm just saying like that's how we view things. And
I'm saying how I view it. I don't view LSU as the pick as of today. I view it as no one is the pick today.
It kind of doesn't matter because he's not picking today.
He doesn't know.
Picking today.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know yet. There aren't a bunch of people saying like, oh, I feel good about my longtime crystal ball for Notre Dame, or you know what, I'm putting my crystal ball in for LSU, because he hasn't picked. He hasn't told the school
someone
this is whatever. Like he's still actively being recruited. by the schools. So I would say that is abnormal or atypical, I guess would be the thing for uh, how things are typically done today. Because usually, unless it's like a signing day type of thing, when people say I'm announcing here, because they know they have that already done, but that isn't the case. So it wasn't the case with Emil Wagner. I don't know if people remember from like a few years ago when Emil Wagner and Notre Dame was just like, well, I guess we're not the pick. He didn't say anything to us.
Yeah.
And then they were like, what? He picked us, right? So that obviously can happen. And sometimes too, like you reach out and it's like, people just kind of think, I think it's us, but we don't know. Like, but usually they tell beforehand, and that's already because the other thing is like they ask for like graphics from the school. Like the schools put out videos, they create videos for them and stuff. So there's a lot of that stuff. And I mean, they might have created a video already, whatever, because that's what they do to get ahead of stuff. But like for all these schools, but it's like it's not done. It's not done yet. So no one should assume anything. I would say, and not to be like, I'm not trying to just say like just to promote people like getting the page views up on our Sports Daily or anything like that. But I'm like, check back every day. Check back later this afternoon. Check back tomorrow morning. Check back on Saturday, right? And see where things are at, because there'll be updates from Matt or Christian, and you'll figure out like kind of where things are from there. But there also is a chance that going into that day, no one knows for sure. That could happen, right? And so with just to kind of transition it to Robinson now, who he's obviously made his date known, or the 18th, but he hasn't made his pick, and he's still being recruited. And that's why too there's like fluid stuff, and it's like, well, this is whatever, because they're saying it's back and forth now. Teams are saying, okay, well, now there's that, like everyone's selling what they can sell at this point, right? And they're doing all that, and it's just like one of those things. Like I think and even if you're going to look at like Tanook Hines, who like everyone's like, oh, he's going to go to USC now. I mean, he's kind of going to USC, or supposedly going to USC or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that for sure. It's just from what you see from people, but that's just when he set his date, it was like people were like, I don't know if these people have room for him. Like it was like a question of how much do all these teams want him. And I think even if you look at USC, like they're not. I mean, they have some pretty good players in their class. I know they've lost all these guys on defense, right? But like they have some pretty good players in their class, but they don't have. They don't have the Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson. They weren't in on like DeCorian Moore. Like they're not Jamie French. Like it's like they're not recruiting at that level right now at receiver that you kind of would expect like a Lincoln Riley offense to be, which I wonder if that will like actually affect a guy like Juju Lewis, who's like, just maybe he's just trolling, but he's like posted pictures of him in like Indiana gear or whatever, which is just so wild. But I just think that like Tanook Hines is like USC's like, well, we got to get this guy, because like they're in a situation where, I mean, they have talent on their roster right now, but they aren't recruiting that well. And some of it is because, I mean, I can't blame some of these guys. They always know that there's always going to be some guy in the portal that they're going to go after.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how they've done it. And when you do that, that's the risk you take. Right. And some guys aren't going to be cool with that.
Yeah. And so for Robinson specifically, I think it's just a matter of, does he want to play offense or defense? If he wants to play offense, he's going to go to Notre Dame, because they're the only school of the three that are recruiting him to play offense, right? Washington's on defense, UCLA is on defense, right? Sam K says, wouldn't football players almost always rather play offense than defense if they get to choose, all things being equal? No. I had a chance to choose. Some guys are just defensive minded. And I have no idea about him personally. I don't know. But if because look at Ben Morrison, right? Like, that's a top 10 pick at corner. And if Washington is recruiting him as a corner, they've got a very good track record of putting players into the draft as corners. They can go very high. He can be a first round pick as a corner. Like, cornerback is a premium position in the NFL. Like, so it is as much as receiver is, right? So it's just a matter of, like, if he believes at his size that he can be like a Ben Morrison type of athlete at corner, then yeah, it's completely viable. Like, I completely get it. It's not like it doesn't make sense to me or anything like that. And that's the question, right? What does he want to play? And I think that's kind of what it boils down to. And I think that Notre Dame, the fact that they're the team that's like, if you want to play offense, this is where you're coming. I think that's good, because Washington and UCLA kind of have each other to deal with for the same position kind of thing, whereas Notre Dame is completely different in that regard. But we don't really know where his head is at. Where are you at with this, Jamie?
Yeah, well, and this is the other thing, is that, you know how it always goes, right? Where it's like, if he really wants a certain position, then they always say, well, you can play this too, right?
Yeah.
They do that because even though they might not want somebody there, it's like they do what it takes to land him. And I appreciate when people are like honest about it, but not everyone's honest about it, and they do whatever they take. They do whatever they say whatever they have to in order to land the player. And it happens a lot, right? It happens a lot. So I think with like wide receiver and DB are both premium positions.
Yes.
Right. But there might be just someone too, like, I mean, Robinson is like, first of all, he's legit 6'4". Like, he's measured in like verified 6'4". Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of 6'4" receivers. Are not a ton, but there are a decent amount. 6'4" corners are unicorns, right? Like, they're very much unicorns.
Yeah.
There's the guy from Arizona, which I'm sure that's what they're pitching, because, you know, the staff at Washington was at Arizona.
Isn't Tariq Woolen super tall too?
Yes.
I know he's super fast, but I want to say he's like 6'3", 6'4" kind of guy.
Yeah. I mean, if Notre Dame was recruiting him as a corner, they would say, hey, Cam Hart, right? Like, that's
right.
Well,
for sure.
That's what they would do or whatever, right? And the other thing is, like, you don't know, someone mentioned X Watts there, right? Like, X Watts was not recruited. They didn't recruit him as an athlete. They recruited him as
a wide receiver.
Our receiver, and it just he did obviously play. I thought he could have played defense when they, recruited him. I thought, he could end up on either side of the ball. Right. And then that's what happened. And obviously he's been a great player, but things change all the time, right? Like, I mean, CJ Procise, like, look at all the things, he was brought in, and it was like he was a safety, and then he switched to receiver, and then he played running back, and he was drafted as a running back in the NFL. Like, things can change. It can be fluid and all of that. Obviously for Notre Dame, it's just different because there's the need. I don't know. And some guys like scoring touchdowns. They like to do that. Yeah. They like to be the guy. That's, that part of it. And I don't know. I guess it just depends, because in some guys it's what you like, but it's also like what you think. Like, I think I could be a first round pick here, but I couldn't be a first round. Like, I don't know. We'll see what's kind of in his head. I mean, there's also the factor too, right? Like, I guess, no one really has brought this up, because maybe he's comfortable to go away from home or anything, but it's like, well, Notre Dame is the one that's the furthest away from home, right? So it's like, there's all that kind of stuff that goes into it. And we'll just, we'll see, because it does become a factor for some guys.
Yeah. John Collins says, why would Notre Dame not accommodate his choice? It always changes. They would. They of course would. But I think to the point Jamie just made, you do have to be honest with them. You can't, if you want them to play a certain position, then you need to be honest and say, like, this is where we think you fit in best here. If you get here and you want to play defense, then we'll move you to defense, right? Go get coached by Mike Mickens. Like, that's totally fine. This is what we have in mind for you right now. The player has to know, because you can't sell a player, especially in today's era. You can't sell a player. Like, if you want them to play offense, but you push them for defense, it's like, fine, we'll put you on defense, and then you try to put them on offense. Like, they will leave, and they can leave as soon as they want, right? You got to be honest. Like, you do have to, and like, players know, and family will know, like, they're not being completely upfront with you.
The other thing is, where do you get on the field? Sorry to interrupt, Greg, but like, where do you get on the field faster and all that, right? So it's like, that is a priority for some guys. And I mean, I don't know what, like, Washington defensive back room is like, UCLA's defensive or whatever, right? I mean, I assume the guy could the easiest chance for him to play early would be at UCLA, just probably based on what they have on the roster, just anything. But if you're looking at, if he were to play corner at Notre Dame, well, look at the corners they're bringing in this class, plus the corners they have in front. Like, it's a very deep position for Notre Dame. So it's like, it also, if I was him and I was say they were recruiting him as an athlete, you would just want to go to the place that you were going to, get on the field fastest, because I mean, Kavara Russell, they didn't recruit him, or maybe they did secretly, but they didn't, whatever. But I don't think they recruited him with the intention of being like, hey, you're going to start at corner for us this season, right? And it just, like, I mean, they had a desperate need at corner that year. I don't even know what they would have done without him, really. They definitely would not have, made it to the national championship game without him, right? So it's like, and that can totally change your view. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, like, this could be my path to playing time early. And this could be, all of a sudden I'm established here. I really like Mike Mickens, whatever. Like, it all can change and it all can flip. And I think the thing to remember with him, just kind of going forward, is that there's still a decent amount of time, still a week away from his decision. And maybe he'll make that decision beforehand. But, I'd say right now he's in the exact same situation as Derek Meadows, where it's like, it's definitely not, nothing's concrete.
Yeah. Last thing on Meadows, I think whoever he ends up picking, I don't think that's over. That's just my opinion. So this isn't sourced or anything, just based on how hard it is to make a decision right now for him. That is subject to change, in my opinion. Now, I don't know that he's going to be taking like a ton of trips or anything like that. It's not going to be like that. I think if, like, especially, let's say he chooses LSU and Notre Dame blows up this year on offense, I think that could watch this space, is what I'm saying. Like, let's keep an eye on that. I don't think it'll be over. Again, that's just my opinion. And so that remains to be seen. On Madden Faremo, look, he doesn't have I don't believe he has a date.
No, he doesn't.
I might have missed it. He doesn't have a date. So kind of everything is kind of subject to change with him. Christian had an update. I think it was yesterday. What day is today? Tuesday night. He had an update that was favorable to Notre Dame, but that's subject to change as well. We have to keep monitoring that situation. Same with Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. If he starts taking trips to Florida, if he starts taking trips to Texas, in my opinion, that completely changes how I think the race is, right? I always felt like Notre Dame could go to battle with Michigan, Ohio State, and USC and come out on top in that one. If he's starting to take other official visits to other schools that aren't among those four, I think the dynamic of the recruitment changes. I'm not going to say that ends it for Notre Dame, but I just think the whole thing changes there. So the two linebackers, I think we have to be fluid with how we take in information with them. What is your kind of take on that? Do you feel any different?
Yeah, no, with Nob, I think I feel exactly the same way as you. It's just like if he's talking about that and he's like kind of switching, it's like he has no clue. Like he has no clue
Yes.
about anything. And obviously that can change within an instant, and he can just say, you know what, it came to me and I just realized, like, man, I gotta be at Notre Dame or I gotta be at Michigan or wherever, right? But like it really does. I mean, it doesn't seem like he has any clue. So if that's the case, then whatever. Uh, Also, if that happens too, assume that he is going to come out. If he's going to go out and check out other schools and like go to games, it's like assume he's going to come to at least one Notre Dame game.
For
You
sure.
know, like that, all that. So I think he had originally said that it was going to go deep. You know, like he was going to maybe decide in December or something like that, and maybe that's the case. And you know what? That's fine if that's the case for Notre Dame because they don't have anybody else in the 2025 class that
Right.
is kind of looking that like that, other than if they're trying to flip somebody later on or whatever, right? So, or they might be trying to do something now. Who knows? But like, you know, that isn't anything that that's the kind of luxury Notre Dame has with getting a lot of guys done, right?
Yeah.
Um, and with Fermo, it's just I've just always been of the opinion that the longer it goes with him, not that I think like, you know, if he takes it into the season, whatever, like, but the longer it kind of goes with him, the better I feel about Notre Dame because of kind of just everything that he said in terms of like what he's looking for. I'm like, well, you know, when you start thinking about big picture stuff, that's Notre Dame tends to win out a lot of the time in those situations because you know you're thinking about all these things in life after football and whatever. Um, like I would have felt a lot worse if, like, say he last week he was like, you know, off the high of Texas and he's like, I'm choosing like, well, I guess he's going to Texas or whatever, right? So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, I do think. I mean, Texas, I do think is. Uh, there's a lot of things that would attract him to Texas, and I think I'm just thinking from a football perspective, schematically too, that are uh, at least comparable with Notre Dame in
Yeah.
terms of kind of what they do and stuff too. So um, I don't know. I said on I think I can't remember if I said it on here or if I said it on uh, Power or whatever, but I just got a feeling he's going to end up at Notre Dame, and I mean we'll see what happens, but that's just my gut.
Yeah. We'll continue to monitor. This is a great question from Nathan Urbach because there's kind of like a lot of layers to it. If you guys had the choice, would you rather land both Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng and Madden and miss on Meadows and Robinson, or vice versa? So would you rather land the two linebackers, or would you rather land the two wide receivers, Jamie?
I think the two wide receivers 100% just because of the need and
Yeah.
like um, while you can, you know, land guys in the portal at receiver. Um, I don't think for Notre Dame they could necessarily land anyone in the portal with the ceiling of those guys. So
Okay.
because of that, and then you also don't want to go into a situation where it's like, man, so all of a sudden, if like a couple guys transfer, which always happens at receiver, it's the you know the most transfers at any position. A couple guys are going to be like not happy that's what's going on there, and they're going to leave. All of a sudden, you can't be down in a situation where it's like, man, it's tough to practice because we don't have enough guys. Because one guy's got a tweak cami, and the other guy's
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
shoulder thing. Like you don't want to get into that situation. You just don't. So, um, as much as I'd say, like I think Nob and Ferrero are better prospects overall. I just think if you look at where they're at linebacker, um, they're in a good spot there in terms of the young guys that are there and are going to likely be there for like multiple years. Um, and also like a lot more where they stand in 2026 in terms of like the guys they've had on campus, the guys who are like, I think at least at this point that Notre Dame is in it for. So Yeah, that's why I think it's a no-brainer for the receivers.
I hear the portal conversation of it. Like I get it, right? Like you can get receivers out of the portal. Good receivers out of the portal. Like I think Notre Dame got good receivers out of the portal this year, right? It's interesting though. Like when we do our rankings in a second, I don't have a portal receiver in the top 5. So you do want to bring in your own kind of guys. Like you do because I think for Notre Dame, I don't think you're getting the stars out of the portal. Like I was having this conversation with Brandon McElinden yesterday from 1 Foot Down, and he was like, "Get a Jamison Williams type," and I was like, "I don't know that Notre Dame can get a Jamison Williams type. They can get the Bo Collins type and the Chris Mitchell type, right? Those are good players for them, and that can they can come in and play good football for you. Bo Collins has played good football at Clemson, right? That's obviously a major university. Chris Mitchell's done great numbers at FIU, like for sure, right? But like you're not getting that Jamison Williams, like you're not getting that Burton who went from Georgia to Alabama.
Burton,
right? Like you're not getting those guys. Notre Dame hasn't, not like quarterback, right? So I think the other part too is with Deuce in the class, like you want to stack those high end, big hitter, home run type of recruits because like that's how you want to do business, right? Like that's the way you want to do business in the game of recruiting. So that's kind of why, like, I hear the portal 100%. I get it. If you miss at wide receiver, it's less penalizing because you can get numbers in the portal there, but you can't get the stars, and Notre Dame needs the stars. That's what they're kind of after. Right?
Yeah.
They're not into those. Like they don't want those. They can always get those kind of mid guys. You want the high end guys, and that's hard for them to get out of the portal. So that's why I think you'd want to get the linebacker. I'm sorry, the wide receivers.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that with receivers, I mean, you can get like impact guys, like you said, but like those guys just aren't available to Notre Dame unless they start taking guys that like, man, this guy really couldn't get into school, but it's like they just were like, we're just gonna just completely ignore this.
Yeah.
Because that was the deal with like Ricky Purcell was like, I think Notre Dame had a really good shot at Ricky Purcell until they were like, oh crap, this guy didn't graduate. And then, oh crap, this guy just got the transcripts. Like it was like, well, then it was done. Right. So, I mean, just imagine if Ricky Purcell, who's a guy, guy's a high pick, like if you just inserted him over the last few years at Notre Dame, that would have been massive for them if they got him. But the point is they couldn't get him.
Yeah.
It wasn't even an option. So until that changes, you always got to value recruiting at receiver. Yeah.
Yeah. Troy McIntosh, if we continue to strike out with receivers, how would you rate the likelihood Dallas Golden or Tay Johnson play receiver? Everyone knows how I feel about this, Jamie. So, I mean, well, you say.
I mean that I wouldn't say that. Yeah, like kind of like that one of those guys. Yeah, sure. I would say one of them might, but at the same time, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. I always think that like you don't want to take away a guy if you specifically recruited him because you thought he could be this on defense, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, like you don't want to do that because then all of a sudden you just weaken another area. And I would say, if I'm just going to put just like a value on it, just as like winning football games, I would still value corner over receiver. So I don't know. It's tough, but I do think like it's not a bad problem to have. To have those guys on your roster and have that guy as an option. At the same time, you don't want to move these guys just to have a body. It's like you moving them because you're like, this guy can help us, right?
Yes.
Which was one of the things that I think was super, super important with X Watts, because if you think about it in hindsight, this was probably one of the most important decisions, easily I would say maybe the most important personnel decision in terms of his own roster that, you know, Marcus Freeman and the staff made. Was they're desperate for receivers. They're like, can barely get through camp. They got like 5 healthy receivers in camp at the time. And so X Watts is like, well, can you take some reps over here? And they didn't just say, oh, hey, you're going back, because he wouldn't have played. He wouldn't have been a guy who started. He just would have been still deeper on the depth chart. And he had shown potential at safety to be like a guy. And then guess what? He's been more than a guy at safety. And that decision to not move him back full time when it looked like desperation, you know, central when you're doing that, that was incredibly smart, because you got a guy who was an impact player out of it, an All-American. So I think it's, you know, smart to, you have to kind of weigh all these kind of pieces of it. But it's a great question, Troy.
I can't say enough about how far Xavier Watts came and how unlikely it is that he ended up as good as he is. The amount of dedication and like stick-to-itiveness on his part is so impressive. So impressive. I mean, he couldn't do anything except for find the football in 2021. That was like it. And now he was the defensive player of the year. What just a performance by him. What a job by O'Leary. Just really, really impressive. As far as the question, like it's a bit for me, safeties playing offense, especially with Dallas Golden. Like I've been you can't. I would not move him permanent. If you want him to play defense, then play him defense. It's kind of like Robinson, frankly. Have his position, get him on the field at his position, and then right. Like I wasn't like when Kyle Hamilton was coming into his freshman season. I wasn't like play him on offense. It was he can already play safety. We already know that. We know he's getting his minutes on the field. Let's supplement that with what he can do in the red zone. Like that was my whole thing. That was the whole bit, right? And so that's what I think Notre Dame should do with Golden and Johnson, should that ever come up, right? Like that's kind of how I feel about it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Nathan, we'll get to Brandon Logan as this kind of gets more and more. We also talked about him a good amount on the Tuesday show, but we want to get onto the rankings. Listen, the other thing we got to get onto is one of our other sponsors, which is VSR Media. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Jamie, we ranked the offensive playmakers for Notre Dame, and I'm curious. So let's just get into it right now. Who is your number one ranked offensive playmaker for Notre Dame in 2024? I wonder if it's the same as mine. I'll bet it isn't.
Mine is Mitchell Evans.
It is not the same as mine. Make the case. Go.
I don't even have to make the case. He's the one guy who has made plays. He was the best player, the best skill player on Notre Dame last year, not named Audric Estime.
Okay.
If you look at, I highlighted this in 6 thoughts today too. Like you look at the games against the top, defenses they faced, right? He was hurt for the Clemson game. 7 for 75 versus Ohio State, 6 for 134 versus Duke, 4 for 71 versus Louisville. The receivers in those games, 2 guys in the rest of those games, plus the Clemson game, had over 40 yards in those games. So Greathouse had 40 against Ohio State, and Faison had just over 40 against Clemson. 2 freshmen, right? So, and whatever, those guys are obviously on my list for this thing this year, but I look at it where Evans is proven. I mean, obviously he's got to be healthy. He has to be healthy. So that's like the one caveat with it, but he can ball. And you could even make an argument that if he would have played in that Clemson game, maybe they win the game because he was that much of a catalyst for the offense. Like he was the best receiver on the offense last year.
Yeah.
By a landslide. And, he finished second on the team in receiving. He only played 8 games. And really, he didn't do that much. They weren't throwing the ball to him that much early on. And it kind of showed like, hey, maybe throw the ball to this guy a little bit more than you're doing. It just took him. Guy makes a one-handed catch against Ohio State. And they're like, hey, maybe we should feed this guy. Like, I think he could be the one guy that I would say has the best chance of being an All-American at his position. This year. Could be a Mackey Award winner. Probably, I would say very good chance that if, healthy throughout the year, he's a Mackey Award finalist. And I know that doesn't excite people because he's a tight end and it's like, oh yeah, another tight end is going to be whatever. But it's just the fact that he's the guy who was produced big in those wins against good teams.
Yeah. And
to the point where they saw him and they're like, oh, this guy's a problem. We got to change something. And he was still making plays, So I think, to me, I thought about it because I was going to because I do think like, in terms of projection, there was another guy that I wanted to put above him, but I just thought, man, I really can't deny this. I think he's got to be number 1 for me.
You're still number 1. You're talking about projection. I wonder if you're going where I went. Blayberg wants Billy Strouth in their offensive playmaker. A lot of people have noted Jacob Paulus. If Billy Strouth is the number 1 playmaker, we are in trouble. And to be clear, I don't think Jamie. I think Jamie knew this, but I didn't rank Riley Leonard because that's not. He would be number 1 if he was on the list. Did you rank him?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. Well, then he's number 1 for me. If I think he'd be the number 1 guy. But I didn't rank him because I didn't want to do the quarterback. Number 1, I have Jeremiah Love.
Oh, he was my number 2.
He's your number 2. All right. So we're on the same page with this. I just think that he's going to be, I think he'll be the starting running back. I think they are going, the fact that they're putting him in the slot, they obviously have big plans for him. Obviously. And they got him in the slot. They probably are going to run him on jets. They're probably going to run him on screens, bubbles, things of that nature. He's very versatile. He might be the most versatile player on the offense. And so I just think that versatility is going to lend itself to him getting in position to be a playmaker on and kind of all facets. Right. And so I just think and also the fact that Jabron Payne is now injured and likely out for the year. I think that also kind of bolsters the amount of touches that he's going to get as well. It's going to be on the field a ton. And so that's just kind of where I put him. Like, I think there's opportunity. I think there's going versatility. I think there's physical ability. And then there's just kind of the nature of the offense as well. And so that's why I have Jeremiah Love number 1. You have him number 2, I assume for similar reasons.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't really need to expand on it too much. I think you said, a lot of stuff that I would say about him. But I do think, too, like the fact that what you said about them, like, oh, hey, we're going to give him some reps in the spring in the slot. It's like, yeah, we got to find a way to get this guy the ball.
When they've already got 8 slots.
They've already, it's like they're doing that because they know that this guy is, I would say, too, you could even say if I was going to, like, I listed Evans, 1, but I could put him 1A and you could put Love 1B because at first I did have Love number 1. And then I was like, no, I switched it for the reasons that I said. But like, I mean, I do think he's got his potential to be a difference maker.
Yeah. When I was putting my list together, originally I had Evans too. And then I thought, you know what? If Jane Greathouse is going to wear number 1, then I'm pushing him up, right? I'm pushing him up from 3 to 1, and so from 3 to 2. So I have Jane Greathouse at 2. I don't really need to go into why. Right? I think he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver. I think he's going to play all over the field. I think if there's a receiver who is kind of on the field all the time, I think it's going to be him. So I wherever it might be, I think he could be boundary. I think he could be slot. They'll put him at field. I don't think they have any problem putting him at the field. I don't think they want him to come off the field. I don't think he wants to come off the field. So I just think that of all the wideouts that we talk about here, it was hard for me to rate the wideouts. But for him, I just thought he's going to be the one who is kind of counted on game after game after game. I think he's going to get the most snaps. I think he's going to get the most production. And so that's kind of where I put him. And also, the other part too is Evans. He's got the injury thing. I don't like that. I don't like that he's coming off the ACL. Right. If he hadn't been, it would have been a lot harder for me because I think he will probably get at least as many snaps as Greathouse. Right. It just makes me a little bit nervous that the ACL thing. That was kind of the number 1 and the ACL kind of pushed it for me.
Greathouse, I mean, he was the best receiver all spring. He was the best receiver all spring. Like, I even think too, like, you don't read too much into the blue gold game, whatever, but it's like, hey, we need a first down to kind of like end the game. It's like, well, we're going to Greathouse here. He was double covered, and it's like, we're throwing the ball to him. That's what we're doing. So I think that is, there's something to say too about a guy who, I think if he was healthy the whole year, I think he would have probably put up. I mean, he did put up good numbers on the year for a freshman, really, really good numbers for a freshman. So that's always an encouraging sign. But he would have put up better numbers if he was healthy the whole year. And then he got kind of stuck on the boundary without it wasn't like he worked at the boundary I think if he had worked at the boundary from the start and they were like, hey, you're going to be a boundary. And like that probably that would have helped him a lot rather than just like moving in the middle of the season to just be like, hey, you got to play the boundary now. Right.
Yeah.
And I think he's someone who is obsessed with the receiver position. Like, he is obsessed with being a good route runner. He's obsessed with, the small details of it. And I think he's going to be wide receiver 1 for Notre Dame this year. That's my opinion, that he's going to be that. So I had him at 4. I had Riley Leonard 3rd, but you said you didn't put quarterbacks or whatever. So if you're taking him out, he's right there for me.
Okay. Who do you have after Jaden Greathouse then?
I have JD Price. So that's because that's where
same.
I kind of.
Oh wait, no, not same. I have someone else. So you go, JD Price.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that if Jeremiah Love didn't exist, people would be equally as hyped about JD Price, and I think he obviously looked, considering he came off the Achilles last year, and that's supposed to be like the year you're not all the way there. And it's like, well, he took a kick back to the house. He showed explosiveness there. I'm just really, really high on him, and I think he's a really good inside runner, and but he has speed to break away too. So I'm just really, really high on him, and I just think if you just looking at it, like, he's one of the guys that, like, they've always been use multiple backs, and never kind of carry the load. And I don't think they're going to make Love give him Estime's workload
for sure
as a runner, right? So I think there's going to be games where it's like, Price is the guy in that, and an equal playmaker too. So I'm very, very high on him.
Okay, so I'm totally with you on all of that. I don't know what it is. I put Faison ahead of him.
I don't think that's crazy at all.
I don't think it's crazy, and I just think he has the goods. I don't know what it is. I can't. I just think he has it. He has always every time he's been on the field, he's had it for Notre Dame. He's never not showed out, right? And every time they give him an opportunity, he's making plays. I just think he's going to be really good. He's going to be really good. I don't care that the walk-on lacrosse thing just doesn't matter at this point. I just think Faison is going to be heavily involved. He's another one that I don't think they mind putting him anywhere on the wide receiving core. And so I think given the fact, I think they could put him in the backfield, honestly. Not like, they're going to give him 6-7 carries or whatever, but like you could put him in the backfield. You could release him out of the backfield. You can do a lot of different things with him. You can run jets with him. I think he's going to be a punt returner as well. I just think that he's going to be a really, really good player. I don't want to say star. I think he'd be better than Chris Fink. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And so I think you got to put him up there. So I had him at 4, Price at 5. Feels like you're kind of in agreement with that.
Yeah. Greg, thanks for not reading Six Thoughts, because you could have just used that stuff from Six Thoughts.
I know it was in Six Thoughts. No.
I'm pulling your chain. But I am going to bring up Six Thoughts specifically.
Yeah.
Jacob Paul has brought it up from the sink, because and I do think like there is a possibility that it could be Faison. Very much, he could be like a 1B to Great House. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. And I'm just going to read exactly what I wrote from Six Thoughts. It's not long, so people, bear with me. I think people aren't hyping up Jordan Faison as much as they should be. Not taking part in most of spring ball is the main reason for it, but he didn't miss with an injury. He was busy as a freshman standout on Notre Dame's national championship lacrosse team. So I've been digging into the numbers a bit with Faison last year. I noticed one thing that stood out from the rest of Notre Dame receivers. He averaged 3.7 yards per route run, which was the highest on the team. It's a way to measure production based on opportunity, and he made the most of his opportunities. So that's a stat that PFF, that's their kind of one of their trademark stats. And basically, like, with all your opportunities, how much did you, when you're in the game, are you getting the ball? What are you doing with the ball? It's even a more, say, accurate way of looking at production than even like yards per target, right? So I was curious to see, after I saw that he was, the highest on Notre Dame, I was curious to see how that fit kind of like nationally out of like Power 5 receivers. So he had 25 targets. So I put the limit at 25 plus targets. Mm-hmm. Others in the top 10 were LSU's Malik Neighbors, who's a first-round pick, Oregon's Tez Johnson, who's going to be one of the top guys at college football this year. He got 1,100 yards last year. Marvin Harrison Jr., first-round pick, the top 10 pick, just like Neighbors was. Oregon's Troy Franklin. I mean, he's in the league right now. He had 1,300 yards this year. Missouri's Luther Burden, who's a 5-star kid, projected to be the top receiver in the 2025 NFL draft. And Ladd McConkey from Georgia, who's also a first-round pick. So those are the other names in the top 10. Like, that's kind of like the company that Jordan Faison was in. So basically, like, yards per route run, pretty good statistic, and it's worth monitoring because there's a strong correlation between that and being a stud receiver. And then whatever, I don't need to read the whole thing, but it's just like eye test, check. Went in very first touchdown of his career, cooked a guy who got drafted in the 5th round, like a corner from Louisville, Jarvis Brownlee.
Yeah,
check. Bowl game MVP. Check. It's literally only because he was, like you said, used to be a walk-on, didn't, missed most of the spring, whatever. But everything we've seen from him, let's just say he was a guy who was, let's say Tobias Merriweather did that.
Let's say like Logan Saldate did it.
Just anyone, just name a guy who did that was kind of like hyped to a certain extent and did that. And they did that in their first season And then they missed the spring, but it was like, oh no, because they're playing, like actually playing.
Yeah.
Not just like on the bench, like playing, like scoring a goal in the national championship game. Like,
Yeah.
might be one of the best lacrosse players in the country before he's done at Notre Dame. I mean, why isn't this guy getting more hype? Like, he should get more hype. He deserves it. And just there's too many indicators there that says he's going to be a stud for Notre Dame this year. So I totally understand why, like, say, like Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock, because people like when it's like, oh, this guy wasn't practicing. So he'll probably start with the twos when they come out, whatever, and they're gonna be whatever. But then he's gonna start cooking guys in one-on-ones, and he's gonna start making plays, and they're gonna be like, oh God, we gotta I mean, what are we gonna do? He's gonna move up, and then I could even see at the beginning of the year, they're like, hey, we're not getting he's not getting that many targets, but it's like, well, this guy just keeps making plays when we give him the ball. So we got to get him the ball more. And then it's just going to kind of go up from there. But like, if you told me that when they play Texas A&M this year, you're like, man, Faison was the difference maker in the game. It's not crazy. It isn't crazy to
No one would think that's nuts.
Yeah. So I'm super high on him. And I do think there is, people should have been cautious about when, because it tends to happen, right? When guys are a walk-on and they do well, and everyone's always like, ooh, what about this guy, right? Because it wasn't like Luke Talek.
Right.
He's got a scholarship down, right? He's a good player, get a chance to be a good player. Maybe he's going to be a starter for Notre Dame, right? But he wasn't doing what Faison did. And didn't do that during the season either, right? And obviously there's circumstances that led to the opportunity, but all you can do is make the most of opportunity when you get it. And boy, did he ever. So I don't know. I do think it's like not crazy to suggest that he could be a breakout player for them this year, and potentially a star at Notre Dame. And I do think now, like, it's crazy because you're like, who is this guy when he starts like making plays for the first time in camp? And now I'd be like, I think, yeah, you'd say he's going to play in the NFL. And that's nuts, but that's how quick it happened. And he's because he's shown enough.
Maybe he's underrated. Maybe we're underrating him, Jamie. What did you have after Price? Did you have Faison?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Who did you have after Faison then?
I had Billy Schruff. So I had Billy Schruff.
Okay. So I did. Okay. I should have told you. I didn't rank offensive line.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. Okay. I'll take him off the list then. And then I put, I had Eli Reardon next.
Okay. So I had Eli Reardon at 8. So I'll just tell you, I had Bo Collins 6, Thomas 7, Eli Reardon 8. Now, I don't have, there's nothing in that for me. There's nothing really in that. The only thing for me, and I'm interested to get this, I don't think Notre Dame's going to be a 12 team very often. I don't think they're going to be in 2 tight ends. So I think that it's more likely that either Jaden Thomas or Bo Collins are on the field to be playmakers than Eli Reardon. And the odds is that, but like, is Reardon, in your mind, is Reardon snaps coming in 12, or are they coming in replacement of Evans out of 11? Like, what do you think?
I think it'll be probably more. I mean, he'll get all the snaps when they're in 12. Like, they'll be together.
Yes,
but I do think he will maybe like have like a third of the snaps in 11. I think that just because I think he is going to show enough that he deserves to get time there. And I really just think that like when you have a guy like that, and I'm totally fine with them going in a direction of being an 11 team. I think that's smart, right? I think that's smart. But I also think if like it's kind of like, well, you're only going to play one back or whatever, right? And it's like, that's fine, but you better work some of these other guys in, because it's like Love and Price or whatever, right? And not that it should be split in the same way that I think that's probably going to be split, because I think that'll be maybe closer to 50-50-ish would be my guess. Maybe like 55-45 or 60-40, whatever. But I don't think it's insane to be like, it should be like 70-30 Evans and Raritan. Like, because he has that kind of ceiling, right? So that's just, and I do think this is where it got extremely hard for me, and it's obviously just totally based on projection or whatever, because I had Thomas right there behind him as well, but then I was like thinking, I'm like, man, I don't know for sure that Thomas is going to start,
Right.
and I do think like Chris Mitchell could have a monster season. I don't know, right? Like he could, but I didn't really see enough from him in the spring to say for sure. And I didn't like hear enough that I was like, yeah, for sure, this guy's going to be just like he'll make plays, but I don't think, that I definitely didn't get the feeling like, man, they're coming out of this being like, oh, this is our number one guy. Right. And then, first of all, I just got to say, I love when parents really, really hype up their own kids in a way, and they're like so excited about like whatever. So like Bo Collins' dad, I don't know if you ever see his stuff on Twitter. He's always hyping up his son and always hyping up Notre Dame and all this stuff. And sometimes I think, okay, maybe it can get a little much for some people or whatever, but I just feel it when I can read his tweets or whatever. This is like this guy's just genuinely like proud and excited about his kid, and that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, and he's like obviously excited about this opportunity. I mean, the guy had he didn't have the best offenses to play in Clemson. So, and maybe he will be that dude on the boundary for Notre Dame. But I would kind of like to see a little bit more before I just kind of get, before I'm like more definitive and saying like, this is going to be a guy that they can totally count on all the time. Like I do think he will start. I would be surprised if he isn't the starting boundary, but to say that he will be the number one or even number two, like overall at receiver, just in terms of just like production and targets and all that, like I want to see, because you're going to go up against some pretty good guys in camp. So let's make some plays in camp and let's see where we're heading. I mean, he definitely had plenty of flashes at Clemson, but he had some drops. He had some other things there too. So you just want to see like a level of consistency there from him. But yeah, just to reiterate, like I love his dad. It's just like pumping his tires. It's like he's so proud of his son. It's great.
It is good. I had Collins at 6, like I said. So here's the thing. And this is kind of the tiers of it, right? Like between 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like so, I had Bo Collins, Jaden Thomas, Eli Raritan, Chris Mitchell, Jaden Harrison, right? I don't think there's really anything in that, honestly. And I think the way that I would look at it is, I think the 1 through 5, Love, Greathouse, Evans, Faison, Price. I think those are the 5 skill guys. Week after week, game after game, Notre Dame is counting on those guys to be really good, to be really, really good. And I think that the rest are just kind of supplementary on a game-to-game basis. Like I think that Chris Mitchell could go off one day. I think Jaden Thomas could go off one day. I think that Bo Collins could go off one day, right? They're not like the mainstays. And I think that if any of the first 5, like if they have kind of a bad game or whatever, like that's not good. Now, granted, like, if Mitchell Evans has a quiet game and Greathouse and Faison go off, right? Like obviously that's going to be okay. But I think it needs to be one of those guys. If any of the 6, like the 6 through 10, if they don't have a big game, Notre Dame could still be all right in that kind of situation. Would you kind of agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that that's exactly how I look at it.
Yeah. So like I think the exercise of ranking them was kind of important in that, like, and the reason I only wanted to do skill guys is because I do think that the quarterback and the offensive line are just kind of completely different. Like you had Strouth on there. Like I do think that if there is any one offensive lineman who can be like, man, why aren't people talking about him for All-American? Like I do think it's Strouth, like definitely. Like I just think he has that ability, right? And I don't know if like Ashton Craig like has that upside. And I don't know that like Jagusa or either the other tackles, Wagner or Baker, like I don't know that they have that upside in 2024, but I think Strouth does, you know? And so I would agree with you on that, but I wanted to kind of put it on just like skill players because it's like there's a like, hey, who are our like our main
The
guys?
guys you got to count on in those, yeah.
So kind of like, and I think we had the same, the same
we did,
five.
yeah,
as far
we
as
did, yeah.
So I think that's kind of where we're in agreement, right? I think there's in some order, it's going to be Love, it's going to be Evans, it's going to be Greathouse, Faison, and Price.
Yeah, I think that's. We'll see how the kind of order works out. And like Greg and I were talking before the show too, that I don't think NBC Sports even does their Inside the Irish blog anymore now that Douglas Farmer kind of left. Well, not kind of left, he did leave. So there isn't going to be the regular like top 25 that they take everyone's votes from all the people on the beat and do that. Which you've taken part in for years or whatever, right? And everyone's taken part in it for years. So what we're gonna do, and everybody does their other kind of like counting down players of where they rank them and stuff. But what Greg and I are gonna do is we're gonna do a top 25 list of Notre Dame players before camp and then after camp of where we kind of see it, because you always go into camp and there's always like Greg mentioned it before the show too. Like everyone was like, Billy Schrauth, pencil him in. This guy's going to dominate a car. I mean, I thought that was presumptuous based on the spring, but there was a lot of people who had him high, and he didn't even win the job. And he didn't start till late in the year, right? So that's just what can happen with it, right? So we'll adjust as we kind of go there. But I think this is like a good exercise to kind of do. We should probably do this for defense too, as well.
Yes.
And just do it. I mean, it's obviously a little different because, you'd have to include like defensive linemen in it as well. But it's still a fun exercise.
Yeah. So look forward to that going forward into the off season, especially now that we're in kind of a dead period of recruiting. And as in the lead up to fall camp, we got to start talking about the actual team and get away from some of the recruiting stuff. So that's where we're going to be at. We'll talk about Nathan. We'll talk more about offensive lineup in 2025, kind of as we get more information and things, because there's a lot of projection there that we don't want to just make, right? Just kind of flying off the seat of our pants. Like we do want to get a little bit more information there. So we'll get to those questions as we move forward. But that'll be our show today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. This went out on Twitter. This broadcast went out on Twitter as well. If you're catching us and you haven't done so before, we want more people to get eyes on our show. If you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel, like it. All right, come back and watch us on YouTube. That's where you're normally going to find us. Have a good day, everyone.
One other thing to interject. Sorry to cut you off, but I just want to make this point out because Matt posted an update while we were recording the show on ISD's premium board on Derek Meadows. Please go check that out for everybody to go
check it out. Check it out. Well, I'm going to go look at it right now. Everyone should go look at it. I haven't seen it yet, so you're going to want to go look at it. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling. What did he say?